Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Back to Basics. I'm still Pastor Don, despite what the lack of an overly dramatic and hilarious intro might indicate. And joining me is, of course, Courtney, the voice of our computer from last episode.
What up? Oh, was that just last episode?
Yeah, that was last episode. It's weird for us because we record these at different times, but yeah, this is following up from our big, grand, dramatic two-part episode, which I gotta admit, I had a lot of fun editing that intro. That was a riot.
That's awesome.
Dinosaurs and nuclear explosions. How can you go wrong with that on a Bible podcast, right?
Yeah.
For those of you, by the way, who don't know what the heck I'm talking about because you only listen to this on the podcast stream, you should really check out the video of the last episode.
At least for that one.
It was wild. So today we are going to continue moving through Genesis. We've introduced our new main character, Isaac, and his wife and/or leverage, Rebecca. Carrying
on the family tradition, eh?
Yeah, spoiler alert for another chapter ahead of now. So today we are going to be dealing with Genesis chapter 25. For those of you following along and playing the home game, Genesis 25 is just a mess of different kind of short stories. And we're going to cover 3 of them today and the 2 other bigger ones tomorrow. So we're going to start from Genesis 25:1 and we're going to continue on through verse 18 today.
Or next week, rather.
No, we're going to continue on after verse 18 for next week. So we're going through verse 18 today.
Yeah, you said tomorrow. I'm being a pedant.
Yeah, it's not like I English well or am teacher of English or public speaker or nothing. Yeah, all right.
I gotta be picky and pedantic. It's what you don't pay me for.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be amazed what I don't pay me for. Oh man. Should we read the Bible at some point?
Yeah, I suppose we probably should. All right, let's read some Bible.
Let's read some Bible. I'm gonna go ahead and take this.
Are you ready for some Bible?
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this one because there are just so many names.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Genesis chapter 25. Abraham took another wife whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan was the father of Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Ashurim, Letushim, and Lemumim. The sons of Medan were Ephah, Epher, Hanoch, Abida, and Eldah. All of these were the children of Keturah. Abraham gave all he had to Isaac. But to the sons of his concubines, Abraham gave gifts while he was still living, and he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the east country. The death of Abraham. This is the length of Abraham's life, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, old and full of years, and was gathered to his people. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite, east of Mamre, in the field that Abraham purchased from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with his wife Sarah. After the death of Abraham, God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac settled at Beer Laharoi. Ishmael's descendants. These are the descendants of Ishmael, Abram's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's slave, bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, named in the order of their birth. Nebaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael, and Keder, Adbil, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Masa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Nafish, and Kedema. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names, by their villages and by their encampments, 12 princes according to their tribes. This is the length of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. He breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people. They settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria. He settled down alongside all his people. All right, so lots going on. Stuff happened.
Old and full of something. Jeez Louise, Abraham.
Well, I wouldn't imagine he's full of that. He seems to have used it all.
So, yeah, he's not full of something anymore. Holy cow. So he was he was so old. Like
Mhm.
I got the impression, I could easily be super wrong here, that that Abraham and Sarah were around the same age. They have to be at least ballpark. And
Um,
like
this
Sarah
is
has already grown old. And well, no, but Sarah has already, when you're talking about this many years, it's close-ish at least. Okay, so Sarah has grown old and died.
yeah.
And Abraham has gotten so old that he's like, hey, dude, feel on my balls and go get a wife for my son.
Mhm.
You know, which would make a lot more sense if you watched our last episode. It was very funny
Yeah. Yeah.
at points. But like all of that. And he's like, you know what? I think it's time I pick me up another one.
You know, just head down to the corner store, grab another one. They're a dime a dozen. I think it is interesting though to note that
And
there
it's not like
is
he wanted backups. It's not like he wanted freaking backup heirs because he sent them all packing.
well,
Every last one of them.
yeah, he's very clear about the fact that Isaac's the only one he gives a crap about.
Then
Um,
why? Why make
and
more?
I mean, look at verse 6, by the way. But to the sons of his concubines, Abraham gave gifts. But at verse 1, Abraham took another wife. There's a heel turn in there that's happening where she shouldn't goes from wife to concubine.
Could they be talking about separate things? Like that's
Well,
his
given
second wife, and in addition, he had concubines. Like he just couldn't
given the
stop
plurality of
jackhammer.
the word, it's entirely possible. It's also possible that he had Keturah and as his wife, and then explained to her, you know, Sarah let me get away with, you know, getting it in the help, so you may as well do the same. So there's a lot of ways that this could have gone, and there's a lot, and it's not super clear about that.
It
But
doesn't sound really groovy. Like it doesn't pass vibe check.
not especially. What I find interesting is that both Isaac and Ishmael are the ancestors of entire groups of people in both this and other traditions. As the verse here holds, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is that Ishmael is considered kind of mythologically speaking, at least, to be the ancestor of most Assyrians and Arabs. Which, as you can see from verse, let me get this here. That's way back at near the end here. They settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt, in the direction of Assyria, for Ishmael's descendants. Like that's meant to establish them as the origins of the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and later kind of most of the general Arabs. Which is why, for example, if any of you out there are West Wing fans, the very special episode they did just after 9/11 on the tension between Arabs or Arab extremists in the rest of the world was entitled Isaac and Ishmael, because it dates back to this whole Bible passage. Yes, I know I made a TV joke that wasn't Star Trek. That's got to be a first for me, but I'll take it.
It wasn't even a nerdy show.
I
I
think
don't know you anymore.
that's a nerdy show. It's a different type of nerdy.
Oh, now you're going into the nuance of is anyone who's into anything to any meaningful degree a nerd? Are sports fans just like football nerds?
Sports
You know.
sports fans are D&D players who don't want to admit they're D&D players, particularly fantasy footballers. I'll be honest.
Moving on.
Moving on.
So what else besides
Abraham
me?
could be referred to as a reproductive nerd if we want to go that way.
Oh my God.
And like the
Dude,
interesting
you
thing,
might have a problem. I mean, like I get this was before the internet and there was less to do, but like what?
you know, talk about backstory we want, by the way. Like Ishmael and Abraham are the origins of entire peoples, but all of these other guys, what happened to these guys?
I guess Father Abraham did have many sons.
Yeah, like the old Sunday school song isn't wrong. Father Abraham did have a lot of sons, most of which were not with his wife.
Yeah.
Or at least his first wife, because, you know, depending on how you read the text, Keturah either is or isn't his wife. So, you know, that's there. And then, of course, you know, we have all of that, which Abraham does give through Isaac, and kind of through the way he treats Keturah and her sons, he gives kind of a post-mortem priority to Sarah, which I think is interesting, because by our modern interpretation of what it means to love your wife, Abraham really didn't seem like he gave a crap.
Yeah.
But then again, he has this, like,
Well, and I'm of the opinion that deeply flawed people can be capable of, real good and like genuine emotion. And like, he used her for leverage like crazy, like to a unconscionable degree. And we've talked at length about how, that probably wasn't exactly what God had in mind. I mean, unlike some folks, we're not running around saying we know the mind of God, but it seemed a little sus. But like, I do get, at least maybe this is just carryover from when I was a child, that I got the impression that there was some real love there. And I feel like it's impossible for us to actually know that.
Yeah, and there's no way to prove or disprove that assessment because it's not in the text. Did Abraham love Sarah? I guess it depends on what you define as love. Because this is a weird, and this is a tough one for us to accept today, is that even the definition of what we think feelings are has changed so much over this span of time. Like,
it's a ridiculous span of time. Society has got to be just completely different, unrecognizable.
Yeah, at a minimum, we're looking at what, 3,500, 4,000 years, something like that. Like,
yeah,
it is not a short amount of time. Like, I mean, Abraham is maybe as far away from Jesus as we are, just in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like,
I seem to recall in church being told that like the Old Testament covered, well, no, it does cover a lot more ground than the New Testament. That doesn't cover the space between the New Testament. Now, never mind them. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess it depends on where one grows up. If you grow up in an evangelical church, the earth is only 4,060 some years old or something. So I guess it depends.
I'm again reminded of Good Omens. But anyway,
I do love that show. I definitely do.
One of these days we're gonna have to sit down and do a Good Omens special. That'll be a lot of fun.
I like that idea.
What else do we have to cover here? Because it does look like we're dealing a lot with like more well-written begats, effectively.
Well, that's part of it. But let's, like, this is actually a section I really like, because there are some fairly surprising and major plot points hidden away in here.
Opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria. Where's that?
That's,
I love a good map.
Yeah. Northeast, basically pretty much most of the Arab and Palestinian territories around Israel would be kind of met into that area. Anything that isn't Greek.
Okay, so like reaching off into Jordan and
modern day Jordan and Syria and that whole area there.
Yeah.
Chronologically, it's more interesting to note that this is laying the groundwork for the Babylonian Empire a few empires down the road. That's going to come back and bite Israel in the ass a little bit later. Not gonna lie. So, and as a side note, like, I know that, like, if you're looking at this literarily speaking and culturally speaking, a large part of the reason for the development of this as a mythology is to establish an Israelite origin for everybody in the region and to kind of establish Israelite supremacy. If you look at this with a cynical eye, then that's the whole reason for it, which I don't. But it's interesting to look at it, I think, a slightly different way, which is to say that all of the problems that happened to Israel, to God, any of God's people, really, if you track them back on a long enough arc, eventually start with Israel. I mean,
everything goes back to Abraham and his uncontrollable libido.
There's something good about that. Like, well, I guess we are making the theological point that the entire Babylonian exile is caused because Abraham couldn't keep it in his pants long enough to get from place to place.
It is kind of what it sounds like, isn't it?
There is an argument to be made that if Abraham were a little bit more of a chaste man, then the Babylonian exile might not have happened. But that's sticking together two very, very different parts of the Bible. But we'll save that for later. But yeah, so when we talk about Ishmael's descendants, that's what we're talking, basically the Arab peoples, or what we would now call the Arab peoples. What I want to drive home, by the way, as long as we're on the subject of Ishmael, is verse 9. Because remember, the last we heard of Ishmael is Hagar and Ishmael just kind of disappearing into the woods, and her almost, but not quite, kind of like leaving him to die. And that really seemed to be the end of the story. And then all of a sudden here in verse 9, we've got Abraham's dead. It's time for him to bury. And Isaac and Ishmael come together. Isaac and Ishmael come together to bury him. Like, talk about your...
That's pretty damn cool.
That is really cool. Like, the most ambitious crossover event in history right here.
Is that the cave that he insisted on hanging out in, and when God was like, here, go to this city, it's safe?
No, that's Lot you're thinking of.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Sorry, that wasn't that. No, that's the one he bought for Sarah.
The field, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that whole thing, and how it felt like a lot of, oh no, you, sort of political.
It was politics. What can I say? But in this case, like, I love how this passage does that and takes what is effectively like, if I were preaching on this, my entire sermon would come out of verse 9. Like, verse 9 is the main character of this half of the chapter right here. Like, that is what one of those where you kind of stroll past it and you're like 3 verses later, you're like, wait, what happened?
Yeah, it's not worded. It's not worded in any way that like highlights that part.
Yeah. It doesn't make a big deal about it, which is almost beautiful in its own way. Like, it's not trying to teach you that as a lesson. Like, it's not a very special episode on brotherly reconciliation here. It's just simply highlighting the fact that Abraham may have fucked up that relationship, but Isaac and Ishmael have the opportunity to bring it back.
I was going to say, Abraham certainly made a big deal out of it. Made a very big deal out of it.
Yeah.
And then after he dies, they come back together. Like, I have to wonder how that conversation went between, like, couriers sent back and forth or whatever. Like, hey, let's meet up. Dad died. Let's get together.
Yeah. And there's also the fact that, the nomadic groups in that era, like, Hagar couldn't have, like, geographically gone all that far away from Abraham. Like, wherever she wound up setting up shop in the end, probably wasn't that far away from Abraham and his tribe. So it's not inconceivable that they could have had further contact down the road. Although I'm sure Hagar would have had very little, if anything, to say to Abraham and Sarah. But it's probably possible that Isaac and Ishmael could have gotten to know each other, like, well in advance of this. Again, not represented in the text, but not impossible.
I find myself very curious to see a map again at some point of this entire situation, because, like, now I'm wondering, like, how big of a space did this take place in? And all of us, like, globally have different ideas of what's near and what's far. Like, I've heard that people in the UK will be like, oh, I haven't seen so and so in like 10 years, but it's so far away, and it's like a 3-hour drive. And I'm like, dude, I'll do that for a weekend. Like, for people I saw 2 months prior. Come on, man. So I have to wonder how big of an area. Can you give us some kind of an insight without actually having a map?
I decided to go ahead and look it up.
Thank you.
So the land area of Israel is roughly 88% the area of Maryland. So
are we just talking about the space of Israel at this point, or like what?
Well,
I know Israel's small.
I'm starting with that. Like, Israel, I'd say more or less the size of New Jersey, plus or minus. And that, like, for those of us who are from America or in America, as the case may be, we're used to imagining a unified America, and kind of like the rest of the world, we kind of lose a sense of scale when we're doing that. But New Jersey is not small. Especially if you are on foot. Like, I mean, you can drive across New Jersey in 5-6 hours. north to south, but on foot, days upon days of journey to get around and across that. So Israel, 88% the size of Maryland, roughly the size of New Jersey, maybe a little bit smaller. Yeah, this is not a small territory, even in those days. And it's also worth noting that territorial boundaries weren't really a thing at this stage in human
Holy
history.
cow, that actually is surprisingly close. I couldn't believe it because I always picture New Jersey as a great deal like chunkier, and like even without the Palestinian sections that really, I'm gonna throw my 2 cents and give them more independence. Anyway, it seems like just this little skinny strip with like a chunk at the bottom.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was about the size of New Jersey. That's insane.
More or less.
I had to bust out my phone and I'm like, let me look at this, and yeah, it's a difference of like a couple of hundred square miles.
But it's true. Like, I mean, it's not like huge on global standard, but it's not small. And particularly in those days, it gets more complicated, like I was saying, because the concept of like national boundaries as we understand them today wasn't really a thing. There wasn't even an Israel, like Israel the person hasn't even been born yet.
That's true.
So like we are pre the 12 tribes, let alone pre the United Kingdom of Israel. That doesn't come around until King David. So what we're dealing with here is basically just, I'm not going to say wilderness, but definitely vast open space, a couple of cities here and there. No kind
I wish I could think of a better term than primitive, because that seems demeaning. And I really think that our forebears didn't necessarily live in lesser society, is just different. So I mean, there's definitely been, I'm female, there's definitely been some fucking improvements, but I also I'm like, I too would like to live away from most people and like,
and
do
if we
something
really want to,
do something with my time that's connected to my livelihood.
If we really want to get into tinfoil hat territory here, it is worth noting too that on the broad scale of time, pretty much everything degrades over a period of a couple of thousand years. Like, we don't actually know like really well to what degree of advancement the people of that era were functioning in. We have educated guesses, but any educated guess could be wrong. Like, they could have been way more advanced than we thought. And regularly archaeologists in this region and in other regions stumble across evidence of some tribe or some group or some city or another having a technology that was like hundreds or even thousands of years like non-contemporary to it by our current understanding. So calling them
humans are amazing.
Yeah, I have no idea. We have no idea exactly what level of advancement they were. We do know that they were nomadic, largely on foot, with camels and what have you. But they survived well enough. If you take the Bible as literal truth, like they were living to 135, 150 years still. So hey, they were doing something right. So
they had a lot to do. A lot of boning, apparently.
Clearly, they were definitely getting their freak on.
They must have had enough resources if they were feeding that many freaking kids.
Well, although I guess Abraham certainly got his money's worth.
I guess you can space them out pretty good when you're living to 175.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, like, they definitely had resources. Abraham clearly got his money's worth. So
things are getting a little sparse around here. Sarah, you want to go wag it around in front of that tribal leader? Say you're my sister. Do it again. Do it again. I'm sorry. When it happened again, I was like, no, I cannot let go of that.
Spoiler alert for another chapter from now, we're not done with this technique. It's gonna come back again. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. So I guess that gets to the end of this chunk here. There wasn't a lot more in here. Did you see anything else you wanted to kind of interrogate here before we close out?
No, I think we've managed to pretty thoroughly interrogate it, given the amount of actual substance that we've got here. I
think that pretty much covers it for the most part. Like, this is relatively tame. Abraham is finally in the ground. I'm sure they had to plant a tree over his gravesite just to cover that.
No, it was in a cave. Big
yeah.
rock.
Well, you'd need the rock, wouldn't you?
That'll keep him down.
Little known fact, the Washington Monument was actually based on a much older monument. So that's it for today. Next week, I'm not exactly sure some of the details, but we are looking into shifting our format a little bit, starting from next week after this episode airs, and starting to, because we had a lot of fun doing our very special Christmas episode. Well, let's be honest. And it's nice to get away from ancient cultures for a little bit and take a vacation in the New Testament. So we're moving to a point where we're going to once a month, we're going to start doing some gospel digging.
Otherwise, it's going to take us like years and years to get to the New Testament. And that's, I feel like our central holy book as Christians. Is that wrong?
It's worth kind of putting our foot in both camps. Personally, I'm fine with having material to do for years and years and years and years and years. Like,
oh yeah, but I would like to get to the New Testament more frequently, you know,
which is fair. And there's a lot to talk about in the New Testament too. For those of you who are interested, by the way, we still, at least for the next couple months, we've got a Bible study running concurrent with First Reformed Church in New Brunswick. Details for that are on the Discord server and on the website, but we are also doing some good New Testament digging there. This Bible study is ripping through the Gospel of Mark now for the next couple months. So we're gonna have some fun with that. Nice. If you're interested, literally everybody's welcome, no matter where you are in the world. And the same goes also for the Discord server, which I talk about every freaking day, but that's our digital sanctuary. So, you want to come to church, come to church. It's on Discord. It's kind of our thing. It's what makes us weird, funky, odd, and all the other things that entirely out of date pastors from the millennial generation would use to describe themselves. If there's one thing I could definitely ask all of you who are still definitely watching and reading to do, it would be to listen to what Courtney's going to tell you to do now.
Oh yeah, like, share, and subscribe.
Oh God, yeah, that comes in handy. And comment too if you're not an evangelical whack job, because we did have some fun with that over the last few episodes.
If you disagree, well, and honestly, even the evangelical whack jobs, if you've got that feels so mean to say, but it's not quite as bad as abusing my faith and turning it against people. Anyway, all right, I'm not going to get mad. But even if you like vociferously disagree with us in the comments, fine. But like, let's
keep it simple.
Watch the video. At least watch the video. Yeah.
Like our last commentary issue was with a guy who wanted to start a fight over something that wasn't covered in any of our videos, at least not since episode 1. And had his own theological axe to grind over something none of us were talking about and really didn't have an issue with. He's just looking to start a fight. And
good faith is something we value in this community. Coming at conversations in good faith.
Exactly. And if those of you who are following along on all of these wonderful exchanges in our comments, I'm sure there's many of you may have noticed, like, there was a good effort to engage this random troll as well. Like, I'm never opposed to engaging with people.
This guy has a really ludicrous and kind of occasionally infuriating amount of patience. I think it's probably why he's a pastor. I don't. I'll eventually show up.
Yeah.
So,
and I gotta be clear,
I want us all to talk to each other, and being like super, super aggressive isn't really helping anybody.
Yeah, but there are boundaries too. And
that goes two ways.
Yeah, there are boundaries too. Like if you start getting discriminatory, homophobic, racist, that,
that's
you will get.
That's where your consistory VP shows up and says,
exactly. You'll get the Courtney Hammer of Doom, and then you'll get moderated straight to hell.
That's
so just a guarantee. We don't even believe in a literal hell here, but I'll moderate you there anyway.
We want to make it abundantly clear that just like, if you've gotten this far in our videos and haven't picked this up somehow, God loves all of us regardless of who we love. Regardless of how well our lifestyle matches our genitals according to somebody else's rules. It just, you're here to be loved. That's what we're here to do for each other, is to love and support each other. And if you come to our Discord server, you'll actually see a great.
Absolutely.
This is not meant as like shameful promotion. Like, we're not making any money off of freaking Discord.
No,
Just come
no,
talk to us on
that's-
Discord. You got something you need to vent, go into our Lamentations channel and scream into the void with us. We will scream with you.
that
come
boy's
share-
getting a workout lately.
It has been getting a workout. Come share, your goofy memes, Christian related or otherwise with us. There's a NSFW channel, for Christ's sake, because
Yeah, we've been
God
ranting about
invented
some stuff in there.
sex. Pass it on.
Yeah, fun fact, Christians still have sex. If you want to know more about that, look at Abraham.
And it circles back to the scripture again.
Exactly.
So yeah, like, share, subscribe, comment, but don't be a dick.
We've had enough of that already with Abraham.
Yeah.
All right. Other than that, y'all have a good week. We'll see you next week for our fun experimental episode diving into the newest of Testaments, brand shiny new. It's got, you still got the plastic cover on it and everything. It's only 2,000 years old. It'll be great. We're gonna have a fun time.
I can smell the ink from the red letters now.
Right. God, King James joke. Bye. Bye.
Bye.